Hey everyone, this is Sean Anthony making part 2 of my Micro Stakes Hyper Turbo series. As is the same with the first part, I will be playing a live session of one tabling, playing opponents that I do not know at all, without any past experience, past history. I'm not using a HUD. I think the live session allows for a more realistic approach. So let's get started here. First hand, pocket threes against a 4x open. I don't expect much fold equity, but I don't see any other play that is more optimal than just shoving here. Immediately I would take a note that a 4x is probably strong with this player. And yeah, go from there. Get another table up immediately. Yeah, so as I was saying with the note, I'll put in 4x open strong with a few question marks. As I realized that this 4x is stronger through more history, I will take out those question marks, and the less question marks will allow me in the future to know that my read is more accurate than one hand. So flat 6-4 off. I think you can small 3-bet this against the player that is folding a lot. Pot here, I'm going to flat once, see what happens afterwards. Again, I think a full pot is probably on the strong side. Here, I'm actually going to check call here. This is a spot where I don't have many fours in my range. I'm going to want to help protect my range by check calling a bet here. Yeah, so that's more of a future play where I'm balancing my range. Let me pull that up. Min raise here, probably would fold that if he shoved without more history. The min raise, though, allows for a larger pot against a guy who will be calling a lot worse Jack and Queen X. Jack Queen plays well in post flop scenarios against a wide flatting range. I could c-bet the flop there. Then I'll just check fold this. On a king 6-3 board, there will be a lot of hands that I'm looking to c-bet the flop with. So, Jack Queen, I don't mind checking back. I expect a player to barrel a lot on Queen Jack pro bets. I can pick up some value there. I'll limp the 10-8 offsuit, see how he reacts to a limp. You can check here or you can bet. I don't mind checking the flop, delay c-betting the turn line, because even though we have some equity here with our bluffs, once he calls a street, it's tough to continue because I don't expect a player at this level to really be folding many Jack or Queen X's on the turn or river, so we're putting ourselves in a tough spot, whereas we could check the flop, and if he checks the turn to us, he's kind of telling us he doesn't have a Jack or Queen X. He's he's allowing us to take the pot on a turn or a river bet while not creating a spot where we're going to have to shove the river a lot. Again, though, betting the flop is not bad at all with our gut shot equity, 2 overs to the 4, and our backdoor flush draw. I think here is a fine shove, king 3 suited. I think one of the main reasons shoving there is good. A king, one of the main reasons, our king high beats a lot of his limping range. It doesn't play well post flop, out of position. We pick up the big blind pre-flop, and also the king blocks a fair portion of his limp calling pre-range. Whereas maybe typically against this player we get 75 to 80% folds against his lips when we shove. Maybe with our king that increases to even almost 85%, which that fold equity actually is pretty important. Here I'm going to 2.5x it, and I'll call a shove if he decides to shove. I don't expect to be ahead often, but I think once we put that 2.5x in, along with the possibility of him getting sick of our raises against his limps, it's possible we have the best hand there, as well as just the the equity we're giving ourselves. Here I'm going to min raise fold there. Fold this. Here I would either limp, or I think all possibilities are okay. I'm going to limp here. This is my standard. I would play at higher levels. I expect him to be shoving fair range. Pocket pair plays well post flop. We put ourselves in a spot where at shallow stacks, our opponents will have a tough time getting rid of their second and third pairs. Let me talk about this for a second. Talking about their second and third pairs. So let's say the flop is he checks back after we limp, and the flop is a 2-5 queen. Against the checking back versus limp range, there's going to be a lot of 2x and 5x in his range that he's probably going to be unwilling to at least fold for 2 streets and maybe even all 3 streets. And our pocket pair at such a shallow stack level gives us a very playable hand in these post-flop limp scenarios. Let me find another game, and I'll be back in 1 second. All right, found another game. Another player that I have no history on. Jack-7 offsuit, I'm going to check back. It's a very playable hand post-flop. If we do raise and he calls, we're actually dominated quite often with our Jack-7. It's not that playable post-flop, being offsuit and being a 3-gapper. Here is very clear value bet. If he called, I would be going for 2 streets of value very often. Here I'm just going to min raise the 10-2 offsuit, seeing how much fold equity, realizing how much fold equity we have pre-flop, starting to develop reads on our player. Here, if I had a spade, I think I would be looking to 3-barrel. I'm just going to check back and see how it continues here. This is a spot actually where I could raise and barrel quite large on the river. This is a spot where our range overall relative to his range is a lot stronger. He doesn't have ace-queen, ace-king, any set really. He can have Jack-10 though, but I really doubt that he bets this size. So I'm going to raise. Actually, I think this is a fine play. And I'm going to continue to shove the river here. I don't expect him to have many aces. He could have a combo draw. He could have spades there. To balance my river shoving range, I might check back spades. Because you don't want to be... I'm just going to shove here. I can raise small, but actually I don't think 9s is a very comfortable hand to be playing post flop against a calling range. Let's say when I raise to 2.5x here, and he flats, there's going to be a fair amount of overcards that I'm not willing to see. He's going to have pretty good equity against us, and we're just putting ourselves in an uncomfortable position by raising small and letting him get good odds to flat pre-flop. Here I'm going to delay c-bet, probably give up going to the river if he flats. I wouldn't say raising small with pocket 9s is a bad play to make at all. I mean, it's a very, very strong hand. I would just, I think my starting spot for that would be pocket 10s and above. But there are definitely players you can play against that raising small there is the best play for sure. One certain type of player would be a guy that you've developed reads that he flats very wide against a small raise against his limp. Whereas, if a guy that's only flatting like queen 10, queen 8, queen 9, jack 10 type stuff, it might not be a better play, but a guy that's flatting like 4-6 offsuit, stuff like that, think I have to call here. I'm going to see an 8x here, fair amount, but we just have too much equity to do it. That's one of the worst hands we can see. Yeah, so a guy that's you know, flatting wider, obviously raising small instead of just shoving over his limp becomes more profitable. The king X offsuits are great hands to balance min-raise ranges. The king X blocks a lot of hands. This is going back to what I was saying about shoving over limps. The king X blocks a lot of hands that either will be flatted or 3-bet pre-flop by your opponent, so it increases fold equity. And even if that increase in fold equity is only a few percent, it really does make a difference in the long run. Fold equity is very important. This guy, note I like to make is, I like to make emotional notes. Shoved. I like to do 3-bet shoved. First two. Sorry. I think this is a good candidate to bet small. We have backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, and it's a very dry board. This is a hand, well, I think this is pretty exploitable to continue here. I'm just going to do another street here. I don't expect him to have many 10x. He's going to have a lot of 5x, 2x. I say that's exploitable because as you move up levels, you're obviously going to want to barrel a lot on this 10x turn, but your opponents will realize it's a good barreling card, so they'll be calling later. And if we're barreling here with Jack 3 suited, we might be putting too many combinations of bluffs in our range, because we're going to have 6-7, we're going to have 7-8, we're going to have 3-4, 3-6, all those hands, backdoor club draws, that by putting hands such as Jack high, Jack 3 in our range that really doesn't have much equity at all, we might be bluffing, we might be over bluffing. If he checks back the turn here, I probably will be bluffing river. So as I was saying, emotional note, 3-bet shoved, 2 of 2. Oh, I think I have an F hotkey that I forgot. I can't type an F. The note that I would make would be he shoved first 2 hands over my min raises after losing a game, which I think is pretty relevant. Even though it's only a sample of 2, I think it could. Here, I think I will. This is a spot where I like doing this a lot, actually. It's very hard for him to have like a 4-7, 2-4. Against most opponents, they'd be betting the flop with any nutted hand here. So it's a spot where I like to overbluff turn and river because, again, this is a relative range thing where I have all the nuts in my range by doing it. On the turn, this is a hand. This is one of those hands where I'd like to min raise and then I'll fold to a shove here. So on the turn here, I'll pause. I'll stop after this game to explain this thought process. Easy fold. That would be a note to take. Shoved Queen 3 offsuit, and then I would put like the 13 big blind effective stacks or whatever afterwards. So let me explain this hand for a second before moving on to the next game. So you get to the turn here. So he checks back flop. I'd expect most players, even like Fish, that if they have, not all Fish, but some Fish, if they have a 2-4 offsuit here or a 4-7, they're going to realize, like, especially regulars, they're going to realize, okay, this is a great hand to bluff. This is like the optimal hand to bluff in that scenario. You have no showdown equity, you have backdoor draw on a very dry board where it's tough for me to defend enough. So he checks back and the flop comes a 5 club. Basically, I will have all 4-7 in my range. whereas he probably doesn't. I'll have all 2-4 in my range where he doesn't. So the two nutted hands, I have 16 combinations of each. I have 32 combinations, most likely. Where granted, I might lead depending on the opponent on the flop, etc., etc. But I have a lot more combinations of nutted hands to him. So therefore, I can increase my bet size and add more bluffs to my range because of that. I add I bet, what is it, 1.5x with the intention of setting up a shove on the river that is also an overbet. It's very intimidating looking. As I said, my range is much stronger than his, and this is a great hand to do with, obviously, just because of my backdoor equity as well. But I would be adding like all my 4x bluffs to that range. I'd be adding all my 7x bluffs, maybe my 2x bluffs. To balance out when I do have those nutted hands, I'll be betting the same amount as well. So give me one more minute and I'll start up a new game. Okay, back with another game. Immediately I see the cell phone icon, which is usually a very accurate hint that your opponent is not the best of players. And again, I'll reiterate, every single hand when you're first playing a player matters in determining reads. Like right there, I'll put it in the back of my mind. He limped and then immediately half pot c-bet in a limped pot. So if I see him do that again and he does it with a good amount of speed, I will very quickly develop a read that he's over c-betting in limped pots, and I'll vary my ranges because of that. That's another scenario where I'll put question marks after a read, and as he does it more frequently, I'll take away those question marks until I develop more accurate ranges. I'm just going to flat here. You can flat very widely. I mean, Jack 2 offsuit is probably at the bottom of a person's flatting range. I was thinking about small 3 betting there. But you're just getting such good odds. You're getting 3-to-1 odds pre-flop in a scenario where high card value is very important. Shallow stack, Jack high is, when you hit that pair, it's a strong hand. And when you're getting 3-to-1 odds pre-flop against a probably inferior opponent, it's going to be very infrequent when I do not play a hand out of position against the min-raise. Here, I'll make it a little larger. Set up a smaller shove on the river. Makes it more enticing for him to call 3 streets. Here, if I bet 90 here, it sets up a 310 into 360 shove on the river. I think I'll do that. Varying bet sizing is pretty important. You should be thinking about that. Setting up, what size will I be able to shove on the river? If you're looking for, like, for example, setting up a bluff, a 3-barrel bluff. Here. A 3-barrel bluff, you probably want to make the river size pretty intimidating. So your opponent, you might want to bet a little smaller on the flop or turn streets to, let your opponent call 2 streets and then overfold on the river. You actually pick up some decent chip equity from situations like that. But it's always good to have a 3-street plan when you're going into a hand. Here I will min-raise fold. I think this is a good spot just to bet 45. On such a dry board, it's going to be tough for him to defend proper range to that bet size. I would be giving up on most turns if he called there. Here again, pocket 4s is a little worse than the pocket 7s hand from before where I limped. Same reasoning. Not too many second and third pairs on the flop are below 4s. I think I'll just shove here for the fold equity. I think I'll just shove here. This could be close. I'm just going to shove. He seems to be min-raising a lot. That's a note that I would take, is that he min raise called king 7 offsuit at 11 big blinds. So if I knew that going into it, I would definitely put queen 9 into a flatting range for a couple of reasons. One reason being that I'm going to be fighting a lot of hands, and he's not going to have much post flop playability with his range if he's min raise calling king 7 offsuit. There is putting himself in a tough spot when I do flat a lot of hands and he's in situations without much post flop playability. Here I think I'll go 3 streets. I would be going 3 streets here with all good jack X as well as my slow played strong aces if I was to limp some of those. So I can add a lot of bluffs there. Queen X being a good candidate because it reduces the number of combinations that he might shove over my bet there. Like when I bet there, his hands that he might be shoving are like queen 10, queen 8, stuff like that. Gives me a little bit more fold equity, along with the backdoor straight draw that I have. You can actually get away with very wide limping range, even at this stack depth. The options you have here are basically open shove, limp, open shove, limp, or fold. I think limping without reads against these opponents probably gives you the best outcome. Again, the note I would be taking obviously here is shoving jacks. Get a fold here. Instead of playing another game to end the video, I'd just like to go over this one hand that I played before. I don't think I explained it properly. I apologize for getting lost in my thoughts once in a while when I'm playing. It's one of the negatives of doing a live session, but I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives here. So we min raise 210 off. That could easily be a limp. I min raise it. Our opponent flats. I check back to flop. This is a spot where I can add a lot of bluffs into my range here. That can go 3 streets. As I said when I was explaining before, I would probably be barreling here with 210 offsuit with a spade in my hand. That blocks some of his flush draws that continue, which and it also gives me some backdoor equity in case he's calling down with queen or 8x. So I decided balancing play just to check this back and bluff on a later street most likely. So the turn comes and he min bets into us. We're getting 5-1 odds here. A few things that pop into my mind immediately when I see a bet like this on this board. One is our relative range is much stronger. Yes, he can have jack 10 here. He can have queen 8, king 8, maybe ace 8. But again, a large percentage of those combinations are probably betting for a much larger size, much more than a min bet here. So our options are to flat, possibly take away on the river. We can fold. I don't think that's an option really. Or we can raise here and set up a river shove, which I think is the best option. Now, my reasoning for that, as I said, which is it's a pretty important topic, is that we just are able to represent all the nutted combinations on a board like this. Why do I think picking this hand especially is good for such a play is, as I said, he can have jack 10 here. Granted, again, he's not betting the size properly, but if he did, we block one of his 10s, which reduces a lot of those 16 possible combinations. So I do expect some fold equity immediately here. I raise it to a size that basically sets up a pot shove on the river. Maybe I could have sized it a little smaller to create a little bit of an overbet on the river, which for some reason recreational players find a lot more intimidating than if it's pot size or under. But yeah, once we get to this spot, this is a situation where I just need to shove for my fold equity, and yeah, we pick up the pot. So please, guys, leave your questions and comments, and I will answer them as soon as I can. Thanks for watching.